Curtis LeMay signs an order that will kill more people in one night than both atomic bombs combined. He knows this. The morning is March 9th, 1945. Guam, 7:30. Curtis LeMay sits at his desk in the headquarters building at North Field. He is 38 years old. He has commanded 21st Bomber Command for exactly 41 days. In those 41 days, he has watched the doctrine fail, and now he is about to break every rule they taught him. The doctrine is precision daylight bombing from 30,000 feet. It was taught at Maxwell Field. It was promised to Congress when the B-29 program cost $3 billion, more than the Manhattan Project, more than anything else America has built for this war. For 4 months, the doctrine has not worked. The jet stream over Japan runs at 200 miles per hour at altitude, bombs released from 6 miles updrift miles from their targets. Cloud cover over the home islands averages 7 days out of 10, visibility 0, navigation by dead reckoning, results measured in strike photographs that show empty fields and untouched factories. The Nakajima aircraft plant at Musashino, 22 missions. The plant has been hit once. LeMay has the photographs on his desk. He flew to Washington in late February. He told General Henry Arnold that something would change. Arnold told him to make it work. Arnold did not tell him how. LeMay returned to Guam. He called his staff officer, Colonel John Montgomery. Montgomery is a planner. LeMay told him to write a new operation. Strip the guns from the aircraft, all of them except the tail position. Remove the ammunition. Remove the gunners. Load each bomber with 6 tons of incendiaries instead of 3 tons of high explosive. Approach the target at night, individually, not in formation. Bomb from between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. Montgomery wrote the plan. He included projections. Losses estimated at 70 aircraft on the first low-altitude night mission. LeMay read the projection. He approved the operation. He did not inform Arnold. Now he signs the field order. His signature is the only authorization the mission requires. The order goes to the groups. The crews will be briefed at 4:30 in the afternoon. 3,000 miles to the west, in Tokyo, another general reviews his preparations. General Shizuichi Tanaka is 58 years old. He commands the Eastern District Army. His responsibility is the defense of Tokyo and Yokohama. He has held this command since November of 1944. His office is in the headquarters building at Ichigaya. The building sits on a low hill overlooking the Imperial Palace grounds 2 miles to the east. From his window, Tanaka can see most of central Tokyo, 5 million people. The largest city in the empire, the capital. On his desk this morning is the air defense plan for the Kanto region. The plan was written in 1941. It was updated in 1943. It has not been updated since. The plan assumes that American attacks will come in daylight, at high altitude, against specific industrial targets. The plan allocates fighters, anti-aircraft guns, and fire brigades according to those assumptions. Tanaka knows the assumptions are correct. The Americans have been bombing Japan since November. Every raid has followed the pattern. High altitude, daylight, precision targeting. But Tanaka also knows something else. In 1939, the Tokyo Metropolitan Fire Department completed a contingency study. The study examined what would happen if the city were attacked with incendiary bombs. The study focused on the Shitamachi districts, the low-lying eastern wards along the Sumida River, Honjo, Asakusa, Fukagawa, Koto. These are the working-class neighborhoods, dense, wooden construction. 2-story houses pressed together along streets too narrow for fire trucks. The study concluded that a sustained incendiary attack on these districts could not be contained. The study was filed. It was not acted upon. Tanaka has read the study. He has 8,100 firefighters under his command. He has roughly 1,100 pieces of motorized equipment. He has anti-aircraft guns positioned according to the 1943 plan. He has civil defense shelters built for earthquake response, not fire. He knows the plan is inadequate for the scenario described in the 1939 study, but he cannot change it. There are no additional resources. There is no additional equipment. The war has taken everything that can be spared. What remains must defend against the threat that has arrived, not the threat that might arrive. The Americans bomb in daylight. They bomb from high altitude. They bomb precision targets. Tanaka closes the file. The threat in the 1939 study has not materialized. Not yet. 20 miles north of Tokyo, at the Air General Army Headquarters, Lieutenant General Masakazu Kawabe reviews his own dispositions. Kawabe commands all air defense for the home islands. He has 210 fighter aircraft assigned to the defense of Japan. Most are day fighters. Kawabe's night fighter strength stands at 20 operational aircraft, 20 aircraft to defend the entire country after dark. Kawabe has prepared his forces for what American doctrine prescribes: high-altitude daylight attacks. His day fighters are positioned near the major industrial zones. His anti-aircraft batteries are concentrated around the targets the Americans have been hitting for 4 months. The plan is rational. It matches the threat. The Americans have not deviated from their doctrine since the B-29 raids began. Kawabe expects they will not deviate tonight. Across the Pacific, the preparation is different. In 1943, the United States Army Air Forces contracted with RKO Pictures to build a replica of a Tokyo working-class neighborhood. The replica was constructed at Eglin Field in Florida. It was built by the same set designers who built Hollywood film sets. They used Japanese construction techniques: wooden frames, tile roofs, paper walls, tatami floors. The replica neighborhood was a full-scale model. It covered several acres. It contained houses, shops, and narrow streets identical to those in the Shitamachi districts of Tokyo. The replica was built for one purpose: it was burned. It was burned 11 times. Each time the engineers tested different incendiary devices, different release altitudes, different drop patterns. They measured burn rates, spread rates, the effectiveness of different chemical mixtures. The final tests used a device designated the M69, a cluster bomb containing 38 small bomblets, each bomblet filled with napalm and white phosphorus. The bomblets were designed to penetrate roof tiles, ignite on the floor below, and burn through wooden joists at temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees. The M69 proved effective. The replica burned completely each time. Now, on the morning of March 9, 1945, the ground crews on Guam, Tinian, and Saipan begin loading M69 clusters into the bomb bays of 334 B-29 Superfortress bombers. Each aircraft will carry 6 tons, twice the normal load. The extra weight is possible because the guns have been removed. The gunners have been removed. The ammunition has been removed. Everything except the tail gun. The crews do not yet know why. In the briefing room at North Field on Guam, the maps are still covered. The target has not been announced. The crews will learn at 4:30 in the afternoon, but in the city of Tokyo, one person writes in her diary. Her name is Sumi Mishima. She is a writer. She lives in the Honjo district. This is one of the areas the 1939 fire study identified as indefensible. On the evening of March 9th, Sumi Mishima writes that the air raid alert sounds routine. There was a small raid the night before. 23 B-29s hit the Oda aircraft works, light damage. The city has begun treating alerts as predictable interruptions, inconvenient but not dangerous. Sumi Mishima notes this in her diary. She does not know what is coming. At Ichigaya, General Tanaka reviews the overnight reports: no major activity, reconnaissance flights, a few scattered contacts. Nothing unusual. At the Air General Army Headquarters, General Kawabe receives the same reports. His intelligence section notes that American radio intercepts suggest 21st Bomber Command conducted a major night flying exercise on the night of March 3rd. The intercepts indicate the Americans are training for something. Kawabe's staff interprets this as preparation for expanded night reconnaissance operations. They do not interpret it as preparation for a change in doctrine. At the Tokyo Metropolitan Fire Department command post, Captain Tomoyasu Masatake completes his morning inspection of equipment. Masatake is responsible for coordinating firefighting response across the eastern wards. He checks the water pressure readings from the hydrant network. The mains are old. The pressure is marginal in some districts. Masate has filed requests for infrastructure improvements. The requests have been denied. There are no resources for improvements. The system must function as it is. Masaka knows the system is barely adequate for normal fires. He does not know what will be asked of it tonight. On Guam, the afternoon briefing begins at 4:30. The crews file into the briefing room. The maps are uncovered. The target is Tokyo. The aiming point is the Shitamachi districts. Hunjo, Asakusa, Fukagawa, Koto, 12 square miles. Population density 103,000 people per square mile, the highest urban concentration on Earth. The mission commander will be Brigadier General Thomas Power. Power is 40 years old. He will fly as commander because LeMay has been ordered by Washington to remain on Guam. LeMay holds the security clearance for the Manhattan Project. He cannot be risked over enemy territory. The crews are told the mission will launch at 5:36 in the evening local time. They will fly individually, not in formation. They will approach Tokyo at altitudes between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. They will bomb at night. The crews are told their aircraft have been stripped of guns and gunners to allow for maximum bomb load. There is silence in the briefing room. One pilot asks the obvious question, what if Japanese fighters intercept at low altitude without defensive guns? The intelligence officer answers, Japanese night fighter strength is estimated at fewer than 25 operational aircraft for the entire home islands. Enemy reaction at night is expected to be minimal. The pilot does not ask another question. The briefing continues. Pathfinder aircraft will mark the target with M47 napalm bombs in the shape of an X. The main force will bomb on the marked aiming point. Each aircraft will carry 6 tons of M69 incendiary clusters. The meteorological officer gives the weather forecast. Clear skies over the target. Wind from the northwest at 25 to 40 miles per hour at low altitude. The wind will be important. The briefing officer does not explain why. The crews are dismissed at 6 port in the evening. They eat, they collect their flight gear, they walk to their aircraft. The first B-29 is scheduled to lift off at 5:36 in the evening local time on Guam. That will be 7:36 in the morning on March 10th in Tokyo. But the bombs will not fall until after midnight. In Tokyo, the evening of March 9th proceeds normally. General Tanaka leaves his office at Ichigaya at 6 in the evening. He will return if an alert is issued. For now, the city is quiet. General Kawabe remains at the Air General Army headquarters. The night watch has begun. Radar stations along the coast are reporting routine contacts, nothing unusual. At the fire department command post, Captain Masatake completes his shift at 8 in the evening. The night crew takes over. The equipment is ready. The crews are on standby. In the Honjo district, Sumi Mishima finishes writing in her diary. She notes that the alert earlier in the evening sounded routine. She goes to bed. 3,000 miles to the east, the first B-29 begins its takeoff roll at North Field on Guam. The aircraft is heavy, 6 tons of incendiaries. Fuel for a 3,000-mile round trip. The runway at North Field runs 8,500 feet. The bomber uses nearly all of it before climbing out over the Pacific. Behind it, in staggered intervals, the rest of the 314th Bombardment Wing follows, then the 313th from Tinian, then the 73rd from Saipan. By 7 in the evening Guam time, 334 aircraft are airborne and turning northwest. Each aircraft flies alone. No formation, no defensive box. Individual bombers crossing 1,500 miles of open ocean in darkness. In the lead aircraft, Brigadier General Thomas Power settles into the mission commander's seat. His aircraft carries the Pathfinder crews. Their task is to mark the target zone with the flaming X. Power has flown combat missions before. He has commanded raids over Germany. He has led formations through anti-aircraft fire and fighter attacks, but he has never commanded a mission like this. No formation, no guns, low altitude, night attack, incendiaries against a wooden city. Everything they taught him, reversed. Power checks his watch. The first Pathfinder will cross the Japanese coast in 6 hours and 30 minutes, at 12:07 after midnight Tokyo time. Behind him 279 bombers follow in trail, each aircraft alone. Each crew committed to an approach that violates every principle they were taught. Ahead in the darkness, Tokyo waits. The city does not know what is coming. The generals on the ground have prepared for the wrong war, and in 6 hours the answer to a question no one asked will arrive over the Sumida River at 7,000 feet. Burning. The radar stations on the Boso Peninsula pick up the first contacts at 10 in the evening Tokyo time. The watch officer at the Eastern District Army Air Defense Center logs the information. Aircraft inbound from the south-southeast, long range, multiple contacts. But the contacts are unusual. They are not grouped, they are scattered. Single aircraft widely spaced across a front of more than 100 miles. The altitude indications suggest medium height, not the 30,000-foot profile of every previous B-29 raid. The watch officer studies the plot. He has been tracking American raids for 4 months. He knows the pattern. The B-29s come in formation. Tight defensive boxes, high altitude. The radar picture shows geometric precision, stacked elements, coordinated approach. This picture shows none of that. Single aircraft, dispersed, medium altitude. The watch officer writes his assessment in the log. Probable reconnaissance. He forwards the report to higher command. The assessment is logical. The information is correct as received. The interpretation is wrong. At the Air General Army Headquarters, General Kawabe receives the report at 10:15 in the evening. His night duty officer presents the same analysis. Scattered contacts. Medium altitude, probable reconnaissance. Kawabe reviews the information. He considers scrambling the night fighters at Atsugi Air Base. The three are 2nd Naval Air Group, twin-engine J-1N1 Gecko interceptors, 20 aircraft. Japan's entire night fighter force in the Kanto region. Kawabe decides to wait. Reconnaissance flights do not justify committing the night fighters. Fuel is limited. Pilot fatigue is a factor. The fighters must be preserved for actual bombing raids. The scattered contacts do not match a bombing raid profile. Kawabe's decision is reasonable. It is based on doctrine. It is based on 4 months of observed American behavior. It is wrong. The scattered contacts are not reconnaissance aircraft. They are 334 B-29 bombers flying individually at altitudes between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. Each aircraft alone, each aircraft carrying 6 tons of incendiaries, each aircraft approaching Tokyo from a slightly different angle to avoid congestion over the target. The Americans have changed the doctrine. No one on the ground has recognized it yet. At 11:30 at night, the Tokyo Metropolitan Air Raid warning is upgraded from caution to alert. Sirens begin sounding across the Kanto plain. In the Shitamachi wards, residents hear the sirens. They have heard them before. There was a small raid the night before. 23 B-29s on the Oda aircraft works. Light damage. A few buildings hit. Most of the bombs fell in empty areas. The alerts have become routine. People move toward the designated shelters. Most are shallow trenches dug along the streets. Wooden planking over the top. A thin layer of earth. Protection against structural collapse in an earthquake, not protection against fire. The city's evacuation procedure directs civilians to assemble at designated open spaces. School grounds, temple courtyards, public parks. The procedure was written for earthquake response. It assumes the threat is falling buildings. It assumes survival requires getting away from structures that might collapse. The procedure does not account for fire that moves faster than people can run. Most of the assembly points lie inside the 12-square-mile target zone. In the Honjo district, Sumimashima hears the sirens. She rises from bed. She dresses. She walks to the neighborhood assembly point at Meiji Primary School. 2,000 people are already there. Standing in the open courtyard, waiting. At the fire department command post, Captain Masate receives the alert notification at 11:35 at night. He checks the water pressure readings across the hydrant network. Normal levels. 4 atmospheres in most districts, adequate for firefighting operations. Masatak does not know that in 90 minutes the pressure in the Honjo district will read 0. At 12:07 after midnight, the first Pathfinder crosses the Japanese coast at Choshi. The aircraft climbs to 7,000 feet and turns west toward Tokyo. The night is clear. The city is visible from 60 miles out, a dark mass against the surrounding countryside. The Sumida River reflects moonlight, a silver line cutting through the eastern districts. The Pathfinder navigator confirms position. On course, on time. At Atsugi Air Base, the 302nd Naval Air Group keeps its night fighters on standby. Squadron commander has not received orders to scramble. The radar picture still shows scattered contacts. No concentrated attack formation. The fighters remain on the ground. At 12:08 after midnight, the first Pathfinder reaches its release point above the Sumida River. The bombardier is Captain Gordon Robertson of the 19th Bombardment Group. He has flown 17 missions over Japan, all of them at high altitude, all of them in daylight. All of them against precision industrial targets. This mission is different. Robertson looks down through the open bomb bay. He can see the city spread below. Thousands of wooden houses. Narrow streets, the river. He toggles the release. The M47 cluster falls 7,000 feet. It impacts a row of houses in Fukagawa Ward. It ignites. A line of fire erupts across 2 city blocks. Bright orange, visible from miles away. Behind Robertson's aircraft, the second Pathfinder aligns on the burning marker. The bombardier drops his load perpendicular to the first line. Another line of fire. The 2 lines intersect. At 12:15 after midnight, a flaming X marks the target zone over Koto Ward. On the ground, the Honjo District Fire Warden looks up. He sees 2 burning lines stretching across the eastern sky, each line perhaps a mile long, bright enough to cast shadows. He reaches for the telephone in the warden's post. The line is dead. At the Air General Army Headquarters, General Masakazu Kawabe receives the upgraded intelligence report at 12:16 after midnight. The report states that the scattered contacts are now converging on Tokyo. Altitude confirmed between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. Multiple aircraft. Attack pattern confirmed. Kawabe immediately authorizes the night fighters to launch. The order is transmitted to Atsugi Air Base at 12:18 after midnight. The Pathfinders began their bomb runs at 12:08. The authorization to scramble arrives 10 minutes after the first bombs fell. 12 minutes too late. By the time the night fighters reach altitude and turn toward Tokyo, the main force will already be over the target. 20 night fighters against 279 bombers spread across a front of 15 miles. The fighters will shoot down 0 aircraft tonight. At 12:23 after midnight, the first main force B-29 releases over the marked X. 6 tons of M69 clusters fall from 6,200 feet. The clusters separate at 2,000 feet. Each cluster scatters 38 bomblets across an area the size of 2 city blocks. The bomblets strike roof tiles. They punch through. They ignite on the floors below. Behind that aircraft, the second bomber drops. Then the third. The release interval is 40 seconds. The bomb run extends across the target zone from southeast to northwest. Within 15 minutes, more than 50 aircraft have unloaded over Koto and Asakusa. Each aircraft drops 6 tons, 300 tons of incendiaries in 15 minutes. The fires begin to spread. The wind is doing what the meteorologists forecast. 32 miles per hour from the northwest at street level. The wind carries each new fire into the area not yet burning. Separate fires begin to merge. At the Honjo police station, Captain Tomoyasu Masatake watches the radio operator try 3 different frequencies. All dead. The telephone exchange in Asakusa has burned through. The exchange in Fukagawa reports partial service. Masatake dispatches runners on bicycles toward the Eastern District Army Headquarters at Ichigaya. The distance from Honjo to Ichigaya is 6 miles. 2 of the runners will not arrive. At Ichigaya, General Tanaka receives his first situation report at 12:41 after midnight. The report describes multiple fires in Honjo and Fukagawa wards. The language is procedural. Fires reported. Firefighting units responding. The report does not yet indicate the scale. Tanaka orders firefighting equipment redirected from the western wards toward the burning eastern districts. The orders are transmitted by telephone. Roughly 40% of the recipients receive the orders. The rest of the telephone network is already gone. By 12:50 after midnight, the fires in Koto Ward have joined into a single mass. The combined burn begins to generate its own physics. Heat output from thousands of burning buildings creates a temperature differential between the fire zone and the surrounding air. Hot air rises, cooler air rushes in at ground level to replace it. The inflowing air accelerates as it approaches the burning zone. Wind speed at street level increases from 32 miles per hour to 40, then 50, then 60. The fire is no longer simply burning. It is creating weather. Convective columns rise above the flames. Superheated air climbs to 18,000 feet. The columns are visible from the bombers passing overhead. Dark towers of smoke backlit by orange fire. The B-29s flying through the convective columns lose altitude suddenly. Some are lifted within 500 feet by the updrafts. Crews report being thrown against their restraints. The aircraft shudder. The smell of burning wood penetrates the pressurized cabins. In the tail gunner position of a 314th Wing aircraft, Sergeant Robert Halperin looks down at the city. He will write in his debrief that he could see Tokyo glowing through clouds from a distance of 150 miles on the return flight, from 150 miles away. At 1:00 in the morning, the firestorm achieves enclosure, 8 square miles burning as one. Surface winds exceed 60 miles per hour. Temperatures at street level reach 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. The fire has become weather. In the assembly points designated by the earthquake evacuation plan, 2,000 people stand in the open courtyard at Meiji Primary School. 10,000 people crowd into Sumida Park. 4,000 to 5,000 gather on the grounds of Yasuda Garden. These are the safe zones, open spaces away from buildings that might collapse, but the buildings are not collapsing. They are burning. At 1:14 in the morning, the fire reaches the perimeter of Yasuda Garden. The people inside cannot leave. The streets surrounding the garden are impassable. The asphalt has softened in the heat. Witnesses who survived describe shoes adhering to the road surface. The radiant heat from the approaching flames is unbearable at a distance of 200 feet. The people in Yasuda Garden are trapped, 4,000 of them. At the fire department command post, the duty officer logs water pressure readings from the hydrant network. Honjo district, 0 atmospheres. Functional pressure for firefighting requires 4 atmospheres. The water mains have been severed in more than 200 locations by collapsing buildings. The fire department's 1,117 pieces of equipment are committed across the eastern wards. 96 pumpers and crews are inside the burn zone when the firestorm forms its enclosure. None of them will come out. The canals offer no escape. The Tatekawa Canal, the Onagi Canal, the Yokojikan Canal. People enter the water to escape the radiant heat. The canals fill. The water in shallow sections begins to steam. The temperature of the Sumida River, normally 8 degrees Celsius in March, rises. Eyewitness accounts from survivors who reached the western bank describe the river surface as covered with people. The river is 200 meters wide at Asakusa. The current runs at roughly 1 meter per second. The crowding itself causes most of the deaths. People drown in water 4 feet deep. At 1:45 in the morning, General Tanaka receives a revised situation report at Ichigaya. The language has changed. The eastern wards are described as uncontained. The report uses a phrase Tanaka has never seen in official correspondence. Hinoteifu, fire typhoon. Tanaka picks up the telephone. He calls the Prime Minister's residence at Nagatacho. The line is functioning. Prime Minister Kuniaki Koiso is awake. He has been receiving fragmentary reports since midnight. The conversation lasts less than 2 minutes. Tanaka speaks 14 words. The eastern wards are burning. We cannot contain it. The fire is generating its own wind. Koiso asks one question. Casualties? Tanaka answers, unknown, tens of thousands, perhaps more. Koiso does not respond for several seconds. Then he says, continue efforts. The line goes dead. Tanaka places the receiver back on its cradle. He stands. He walks to the window overlooking the city. From Ichigaya, 2 miles west of the burn zone, the eastern sky glows orange. Smoke rises in a column visible against the stars. The column is bending. The upper atmosphere winds are carrying it east over the Pacific. Tanaka can smell the smoke through the closed window. He thinks of the 1939 fire study. The study that concluded a sustained incendiary attack on the Shitamachi districts could not be contained. The study was correct. Above the city, the bombers keep coming. By 2 in the morning, more than 200 aircraft have unloaded. 78 remain inbound. The release point originally marked by the pathfinders no longer matters. The flaming X is no longer distinguishable inside the larger burn. Bombardiers now aim at the edge of the existing fire, extending the destruction outward. The planned target zone of 12 square miles expands past 15. In the Imperial Palace grounds 2 miles west of the burn, Emperor Hirohito has been moved to the air raid shelter. The Obunko, 11 meters underground, concrete walls, reinforced ceiling. From inside the bombing is not audible. The Emperor does not know what is happening in the eastern wards. At 2:10 in the morning, General Tanaka issues his final coordinated order. All available army units in the Kanto region are directed to assist civilian evacuation. The 1st Imperial Guards Division, the Kono regiments at Akasaka, engineering units at Kampasaka. The order reaches the units. The units cannot reach the fire. Truck convoys dispatched from Akasaka turn back at the Sumida River. The Kototoi Bridge is impassable. The steel deck has warped from the radiant temperature on the eastern bank. A staff car attempts to cross. The tires melt on the bridge surface. The fire is now a physical barrier. At the Prime Minister's residence, Koizo receives telephone reports every 15 minutes through the night. His chief cabinet secretary, Hiroshi Shimomura, sits with him. By 2:30 in the morning, Koizo no longer attempts to issue instructions. Shimomura will record later that the Prime Minister simply sat in silence, listening to reports of districts that no longer existed. There is no functional command path into the burn zone. Inside the firestorm, the destruction is absolute. Temperatures at street level exceed 1,800 degrees. Window glass in the surviving concrete buildings melts. The Matsuya department store, the Honjo public library, glass runs down the exterior walls in streams, steel girders bend under their own weight, the Sumida River fills with bodies. The river is 200 meters wide. Thousands of people are in the water. Most are dead, some are still alive. The current carries them downstream. Bodies accumulate against the bridge pilings. The water temperature has risen to the point where survival time is measured in minutes. At 2:37 in the morning, the last main force B-29 releases over Tokyo. The aircraft commander is Captain Charles Phillips of the 73rd Bombardment Wing. Phillips notes in his log that he can read his instrument panel by the light coming up through the open bomb bay. He can read his instruments by the light of a burning city from 6,000 feet. The bombing continues by trailing aircraft and stragglers until 3 in the morning. 2 hours and 37 minutes since the first bomb fell. The fire will continue burning for another 6 hours. At 3:14 in the morning, Brigadier General Thomas Power transmits a coded mission report to LeMay on Guam. The report runs 11 words. Primary target struck. All aircraft off target. Force returning. Power does not yet know what the strike has accomplished. He knows only that the target burned. On Guam, LeMay waits in the operations room at North Field. Colonel Montgomery's projection sits on the desk. 70 aircraft lost. As reports come in through the morning, the actual figure becomes clear. 14 B-29s lost, 42 damaged. Of the 334 aircraft that took off, 279 reached the target and bombed. The loss rate is 4%, acceptable. LeMay reads the numbers. He says nothing for a long interval, then he speaks. The remark is recorded by his aide, Lieutenant Colonel St. Clair McKelway. The mission will be repeated. In Tokyo, dawn comes at 5:46 in the morning on March 10th. The sun rises through smoke that has reached the stratosphere. The city is still burning. General Shizuichi Tanaka leaves the headquarters at Ichigaya at 6 in the morning on March 10th. The sun has risen. The smoke obscures it. The sky over eastern Tokyo is grey-brown. Ash falls like snow across the western districts. Tanaka rides in a staff car with his aide, Major Kenji Yamada. Yamada carries a notebook. His orders are to record what they find. The car is stopped 4 times by impassable streets. Debris blocks the roads. Collapsed buildings. Fire equipment abandoned in the roadway. At 7 in the morning, the car can go no further. Tanaka and Yamada continue on foot. They enter the Honjo district at 7:30. The district no longer exists as a recognizable place. Where there were streets, there are corridors of ash. Where there were houses, there are foundations. Where there were trees, there are charred stumps. The fire is still burning in isolated pockets. Smoke rises from basements, from the remains of warehouses, from piles of debris too deep to have burned completely. Tanaka walks in silence. Yamada follows, writing in the notebook. They pass the Meiji Primary School at 8 in the morning. 2,000 people assembled in the courtyard the night before, following the earthquake evacuation procedure, gathering in an open space away from structures that might collapse. The courtyard is open to the sky. No roof collapsed here, no building fell, but 2,000 people are dead. They lie where they stood, outlines on the scorched ground, shadows in ash, bodies reduced to forms barely recognizable as human. Tanaka stops walking. He stands at the edge of the courtyard. He does not enter. Yamada writes in the notebook, Meiji Primary School, estimated 2,000 dead, among them the writer Sumi Mishima. Her diary ends on March 9th. They continue. At 8:45 they reach Yasuda Garden. The garden was a designated assembly point. 4,000 to 5,000 people gathered here. The garden was supposed to be safe. Open ground, stone paths, a pond. The pond is dry. The water boiled away in the heat. The bodies lie in clusters. Families grouped together. People who sought shelter pressed against the garden walls. The walls offered no protection. Tanaka counts. Then he stops counting. Yamada writes, Yasuda Garden, estimated 4,000 dead. Undercount probable. They walk through the garden. The stone paths are littered with objects, eyeglasses, shoes, a child's toy. These items survived. The people who carried them did not. Tanaka picks up a pair of eyeglasses. The frames are bent, the lens is intact. He holds them for a moment. Then he places them back on the path where he found them. They continue walking. By 11 in the morning, Tanaka and Yamada have covered 6 miles on foot through the burned districts: Honjo, Asakusa, Fukagawa, Koto, 16 square miles destroyed. Yamada's notebook contains page after page of locations and casualty estimates. The figures will be compiled into Tanaka's official report by evening. They return to Ichigaya at noon. Tanaka goes directly to his office. He sits at his desk. He dictates the report to Yamada. The report states the destroyed area at 16 square miles. It states the dead at approximately 80,000 with substantial undercount expected. It states that the fire defense system proved completely inadequate against sustained low-altitude incendiary attack. It states that the civil evacuation procedures designed for earthquake response directed civilians into areas where they were killed en masse. The report is classified. It will be submitted to Imperial General Headquarters. It will not be released to the public. Tanaka signs the report at 7 in the evening on March 10th. He files it. He knows what the official announcement will say. At 3 in the afternoon, Imperial General Headquarters issues a radio announcement describing the raid on Tokyo. The announcement states that American bombers conducted a scattered incendiary attack on the capital. The announcement states that air defenses repelled the attack. 15 American bombers were shot down. The actual figure, as General Kawab's command knows by that hour, is 14 B-29s lost to all causes, most to mechanical failure and convective turbulence over the fires, not to combat. The announcement does not mention casualties. The announcement does not mention the 16 square miles of the city that no longer exist. The Japanese public hears that Tokyo was attacked, that the attack was repelled, that the Americans lost 15 bombers. They do not hear that 80,000 of their countrymen are dead. On March 12th, an internal assessment is circulated within Imperial General Headquarters. The document is written by Lieutenant General Torashiro Kawabe. He is the Deputy Chief of the Army General Staff. He is also the older brother of Lieutenant General Masakazu Kawabe, who commands the Air General Army. The assessment is marked for restricted circulation. 23 copies. The document is 3 pages long. The conclusion is stated in one sentence. The defense of the home islands against night incendiary attack at low altitude is not presently feasible. It is the first time in Japanese military correspondence that the war over the home islands has been declared lost. The document is filed. It is not acted upon. There is nothing to act upon. The assessment is correct. The means to defend against the new American tactic do not exist. On Guam, LeMay reads the reconnaissance photographs on the afternoon of March 10th. B-29s of the 3rd Photographic Reconnaissance Squadron flew the post-strike pass at 11:35 in the morning Tokyo time. The photographs show the burn area in detail. 16 square miles of ash and rubble, the Sumida River visible as a dark line through the destruction, the surrounding districts untouched. LeMay studies the photographs for 10 minutes. Then he issues orders. The same operation will be conducted against Nagoya on the night of March 11th. The Nagoya raid launches on schedule. Then Osaka on March 13th, then Kobe on March 16th, then Nagoya again on March 18th. In 9 days, the 21st Bomber Command burns 32 square miles of urban Japan. The loss rate remains under 5%. The tactic works. General Shizuichi Tanaka survives the night of March 9th, 1945. He continues in command of the Eastern District Army through the spring. Through the summer. On August 6th, an atomic bomb destroys Hiroshima. On August 9th, an atomic bomb destroys Nagasaki. On August 14th, Emperor Hirohito decides to surrender. The decision is recorded. The Emperor's voice is captured on a phonograph record. The broadcast is scheduled for noon on August 15th. On the night of August 14th, a group of army officers attempt to prevent the broadcast. The conspirators are led by Major Kenji Hatanaka. They plan to seize the Imperial Palace, to find the recording, to destroy it, to continue the war. They need support from the army units guarding Tokyo. They need the Eastern District Army. They approach General Tanaka. They ask for his cooperation. Tanaka refuses. On the night of August 14th, Tanaka personally enters the Imperial Palace grounds. He confronts the rebel officers. He orders them to stand down. The coup ends without bloodshed. The Emperor's broadcast proceeds as scheduled on August 15th at noon. Japan surrenders. The war is over. 9 days later, on the morning of August 24th, 1945, General Shizuichi Tanaka returns to his official residence. He is 58 years old. He has served in the Imperial Japanese Army for 38 years. He has commanded troops in China, in the Philippines, in the defense of Tokyo. He enters his study. On the desk are letters, one to his family, one to his staff, one to the Emperor. The desk is covered with Buddhist sutras, prayers written in his own hand. Tanaka sits at the desk. He picks up his service pistol. He does not write a final statement explaining his decision. The letters on the desk contain only personal matters. Instructions for his funeral, apologies to his family, but those who knew him understand. 83,000 people died under his command on the night of March 9th and 10th. 1 million people lost their homes. He could not have prevented what happened, but he commanded the defense. The defense failed. In the culture Tanaka served, that requires an accounting. At 10 in the morning on August 24th, 1945, Tanaka shoots himself through the heart. He dies at his desk. He is buried at Tamarean Cemetery in Fuchu, west of Tokyo. The grave marker carries his name, his rank, the dates of his life, nothing else. In Yokohamicho Park in Sumida Ward, there stands a memorial hall. The hall was built in 1931 for the victims of the 1923 earthquake. 38,000 people died at this location when fire swept through the former Army clothing depot during the quake. In 1948, the hall was rededicated. It now holds the remains of the unidentified dead of March 9th and 10th, 1945. The ossuary inside contains the ashes of 105,400 people. Earthquake victims and fire victims are not separated. The remains cannot be distinguished. Ash from 1923, ash from 1945, combined. The hall stands at 2325 Yokohama, Sumidaku, Tokyo. It is open to the public. On the wall inside, there is an inscription. It lists the number of dead. It lists the date. March 10th, 1945. It does not assign blame. It does not explain strategy. It does not justify or condemn. It states only what happened. The final accounting, completed in 1949 by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Board, records the dead at 83,793, the injured at 40,918, the displaced at 1,008,005, 16 square miles of the city destroyed, 267,000 buildings destroyed, 1/4 of Tokyo's housing stock gone in one night, the single most destructive air attack in human history. More destructive than Dresden, more destructive than Hiroshima, more destructive than Nagasaki, and it was not the last. Nagoya burned, Osaka burned, Kobe burned, Yokohama burned. 67 Japanese cities burned between March and August of 1945. But Tokyo was the first. Tokyo was the night the doctrine changed. The defense that Tokyo prepared was built for precision daylight bombing of industrial targets, high altitude, formations. Predictable approach patterns. The defense was correct in its assumptions, complete in its preparations, rational in its execution. It answered the wrong question. On the night of March 9th, 1945, the question changed. The Americans did not come in daylight. They did not come at high altitude. They did not come in formation. They did not target factories. They came at night, at low level. Individually, they targeted the city itself. The Japanese generals recognized this within 48 hours. Lieutenant General Torishiro Kawabe wrote it in his assessment on March 12th. Defense is not presently feasible. The war over the home islands was lost, not because Japanese soldiers lacked courage, not because Japanese commanders lacked skill, but because the war they prepared to fight was not the war that arrived. The B-29s that burned Tokyo on March 9th and 10th did not come as an air force attacking military targets. They came as a force of nature, unstoppable, indiscriminate, total. And the men who watched from the ground, the generals who commanded the defense, knew what they were witnessing. They said so in their own files, in classified reports that would not be read for years. They said the defense had failed. They said the fire could not be stopped. They said the casualties were catastrophic. They said it in writing, plainly, without evasion, and then they continued to serve, because that was their duty. General Tanaka continued to serve until the surrender. Then he took his own life, because that too was his duty. The fire burned for 6 hours, the smoke rose for days, the ash fell across Tokyo for a week. And in the burned districts, in the places where neighborhoods once stood, there was silence, no voices, no traffic, no life. Only wind moving through the ruins of what had been the most densely populated 16 square miles on Earth. The defense built for the war that was supposed to come had been perfect. And it had answered the wrong question. That is what the Japanese generals said, in their own words, in their own files, 48 hours after the city burned.